And hi, everybody. Welcome back to Sports Talk. Doug Miles along with Don Henderson as we come to you live again on a Monday night. Of course, a busy weekend. Lots of football to talk about. Of course, college game, NFL last night, and talk a little baseball as well if we have time a little later on. But we're going to start with a good old friend of ours from the show. He's always has some great sports books. About every couple of years or so ago, we had him on talking about his book about Brett Favre. But he's also written a book about Walter Payton, about Showtime, the L.A. Lakers. But he's got a new one out. Comes out tomorrow. That's the 11th, and it's called Football for a Buck, the crazy rise and crazier demise of the USFL. And we're going to find out kind of the history of that strange league. And Jeff Pearlman joins us tonight by telephone. And good to have you back with us, Jeff. How are you?
You know, it's funny. When a book is coming out, the closest thing I can compare it to is like a bar mitzvah or a wedding. So the night before, this is the night before. I'm going over my Hoptora portion one last time.
That's right.
I'm good.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, having been from Philly and worked in Philly my entire life, that for a short period of time was a big part of Philadelphia football.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Stars, Philadelphia Stars, if you remember, were a great team from top to bottom. Carl Peterson as GM. Tim Mora as the coach, Kelvin Bryant, great running back, Sam Mills, great linebacker, Chuck Fusina. They won 2 out of the 3 USFL championships, won all 3 championship games. They're just really well-constructed. They're just really well-constructed. Carl Peterson, the general manager who later went on a lot of fame with the Chiefs, he had so many NFL connections. And whenever a guy was cut, whenever he had a deal with the Eagles, whenever they cut someone, they would call him, and he would wait to sign him. Because it worked well for the Eagles because they didn't have to worry about another NFL team signing him if they went to the Stars, and it worked well for the Stars, obviously, because they were getting some good players.
Well, Carl was a terrific assistant for Dick Vermeil for so many years. He came into the Eagles with Dick Vermeil, as a matter of fact, and then, of course, moved up and then went on, as you say, to Kansas City and did a great job out there as well. And now he's I was talking to Dick not too long ago, and he's now retired on a boat just sailing around.
That's funny. Well, it's actually interesting because he hired Tim Mora as a head coach, and Mora, Vermeil, and Carl Peterson were all together at UCLA. So there's really a lot of, there's a lot of sort of bonds between the Eagles and the Stars, even though they were supposed to be enemies. In fact, Sam Mills wound up being, I think, the best player in the USFL. A lot of people would say Herschel Walker. And even Sam Mills, the Cleveland Browns cut him, and Sam Rutigliano, the coach of the Browns at the time, called Carl Peterson and said, "You want to sign this guy?" And Peterson was like, "He's only 5'9". Rutigliano said, "You'll see him play, and you will want him." And Sam Mills, I think we all agree, went down as one of the great linebackers in NFL history.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing because they talked about how small he was and he wasn't going to be able to do this, he wasn't going to be able to do that. But I think the best thing about it was that Carl put together an organization, and my feeling has always been it's not the players, it's the guys upstairs, from the president to the general manager. They're the guys that make the team. And if you don't have that upstairs, you're never going to have a good team. And, of course, in their case in Philadelphia, as you said, they won 2 out of the 3 years because they had great management.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, like a lot of the teams that did poorly in that league, they didn't measure character at all. Like the Washington Federals, just as an example, were a really bad team. And they had more sort of drug addicts, alcoholics. They just didn't care. So their starting quarterback for a while was Joe Gilliam, who was Terry Bradshaw's backup with the Steelers. And Joe Gilliam was living in a halfway house. And they had more starting drug addicts the Washington Federals. So he's a functioning drug addict, or not functioning drug addict, who would go out at night and come to play. And Peterson and Mora, they really sort of looked for character guys. So, Kelvin Bryant, their star running back out of North Carolina, very character guy. Irv Eaton, star offensive lineman, character guy. They had Bart and Brad Oates, the brothers, offensive lineman, character guys. Chuck Fusina, not the sexiest quarterback if you're looking at arm strength or mobility, but just kind of a Joe Montana-like winner. He was just really smart. The way they built that team was very meticulous.
When you go back and look at the USFL, now we're talking about the last couple of years. You got 2, maybe 3 different spring football leagues. 2 definitely going to start, I think, in the next year or 2. Another one that was supposed to start based right in our area, Jeff, the MLFB. I don't think that's going to happen, but you got 2 other ones that look like they're going to be a go.
Spring
and
football leagues,
it's been a long time since the USFL folded. Another one, I guess there's a market for it now. But back when the USFL started,
that's going to happen. But
what was the thought then? That put this league together.
I actually think it made more sense then than it does now because the NFL wasn't nearly as powerful then as it is now and ubiquitous. The idea in the early 80s was we're going to have a spring league. We're going to have drafts that are largely regionally based. So the teams are going to, you're going to, if you're a Philadelphia Stars fan, your players are going to be largely from Penn State and from Pitt and from Delaware and from teams in the area. So presumably your fans are going to come along with you for the ride. They grew up watching little Bobby play at wherever, Newark, Delaware, and now here he is playing for the Stars. So that was a big thing for them. They weren't going to try to battle the NFL directly. They were each going to have 1 or 2 sort of marquee players. And the rest were going to be either kind of fringe NFL guys, good but not great college guys. And then quickly what happened is Herschel Walker decided he wanted to come out early. The NFL at that point didn't take early entries. So he negotiated with the New Jersey Generals of the USFL. Interestingly, as soon as he started negotiating with the USFL, the Dallas Cowboys reached out and offered him a deal, and he ended up going to the USFL instead. But once you sign a Herschel Walker and you spend millions of dollars, it's hard to then say we're never going to do that again. That was just a one-time thing. And before long, they were spending and spending and spending, and they were outspending their means, and it kind of killed them quick.
Well, Donald Trump proved early that he was a great negotiator.
You think? Oh, my God, I couldn't tell if you were serious. I was going to say, oh.
Well, the Generals did well early on, didn't they, Jeff? I mean, they drew fairly well, but then they fell apart quickly, right? Talk a little about that part of the story.
If we're being honest about it, it was all a con for him. I'm really being serious. It was just a con for him. In 1983, the Generals were owned by a guy named Walter Duncan, and he was from Oklahoma, and he wanted to sell the team. He was selling it for $8 million. Donald Trump paid $10.5 million. He overpaid for the team. And when he got the Generals, in the lead up to it, all he did was say how great spring football was and how excited he was. As soon as he gets the team, we need to move to fall. We have to move to fall. Fall is where football belongs. And it turns out he just wanted an NFL team. He tried buying the Baltimore Colts in '80. It failed. He saw this as a quick way to get into the NFL. So he had a secret meeting with Pete Rozelle in 1984 where he told Rozelle he didn't care about the USFL. He just wanted to get in the NFL, and he would do whatever he could to get in. And Rozelle said to him very bluntly, as long as I'm involved with the NFL, as long as my family is involved with the NFL, you'll have nothing to do with this league.
Wow.
That's true. Meeting at the Pierre Hotel. Trump was undeterred, led the fight to move to fall, guaranteed the other owners he could get a fall TV deal. He lied about his meetings with other owners. He created a fake publicist named John Barron, which was him disguising his voice. He would call newspapers and talk about how Mr. Trump needs to move to fall and the league needs to move to fall. Then he would have Donald Trump act as he would call as himself then. So you had a double sourcing. You had this John Barron guy and you had Donald Trump. But it was just a con. It was Donald Trump disguising his voice. He pushed and pushed and pushed for fall. Promised the other owners he'd get a fall TV deal. Then promised the other owners that the NFL would settle if they decided to sue them. Then he led the lawsuit to sue him. He hired Roy Cohn, who's famous for being an attorney during the McCarthy trials, as the USFL's lead attorney. He was a complete disaster. Donald Trump was named. It was an antitrust suit against the NFL. It was filed in a federal court in New York City, in Manhattan. Donald Trump was USFL's star witness by his design. He was a nightmare as a witness. I interviewed one of the jurors who said he was just a buffoon, and he was bombastic, and he bragged, and he boasted, and he turned what should have been the underdog, the USFL, into a bully. And at the end of the day, USFL was trying to prove that the NFL had monopolized TV. And at the end of the day, the jury actually agreed with them that the NFL had monopolized TV, but also said the ultimate blame for the USFL's demise is USFL itself. And the number one person they looked at was Donald Trump. And the greatest moment in that trial is the verdict is announced, and the owner of the New York Giants is sitting next to Donald Trump, and he opens up his wallet, pulls out a dollar bill, and hands it to him.
Well, I think that all, you detail it 100%. I think the one thing that you go back to is what I said at the top of the show. Management is everything. And you're looking at one organization in Philadelphia that managed perfectly, and many, many other organizations within the league itself that were just dreadful.
Oh, yeah. Well, there was my favorite sort of management story in the USFL is the owner of the Chicago Blitz, which was coached by George Allen, and the general manager is Bruce Allen. It's kind of interesting. The owner was a guy named Ted Dietrich, and he was a surgeon in Phoenix, Arizona. In the first year they played in Chicago, they were a very good team. And then Ted Dietrich decided he got tired of flying 3 hours to Chicago 9 times a year for games. So the USFL allowed the Chicago organization and the Phoenix, Arizona organization to be traded for each other. So the biggest trade in professional sports history, the Chicago Blitz and the Arizona Wranglers were traded for one another. So all the Blitz players were traded to Arizona, all the Arizona players were traded to Chicago, all because the owner of the Blitz did not feel like flying 3 hours. That's a true story. It's the craziest thing ever.
Doug?
You go back again. They did a documentary a few years ago on the USFL. I guess it was ESPN.
Right.
I saw it on there, and
it was a 30 for 30.
30 for 30. That was it. Yeah, and they interviewed Trump about it. He didn't really want to talk about it. He was kind of reluctant. The guy that interviewed him gave him a hard time. But you're right. He was the point man for what do you say, the demise of the league. I guess they technically got $3, right? Because there was Tripoli damages,
double.
so $3 totally. Is that? But still. But the league in itself had some good players, like you said. And I remember watching some of the games. ABC had the package, right? Keith Jackson, I remember, did some of the games. So it wasn't a bad quality of football. I mean, it wasn't NFL quality at the time, maybe by today's standards, but not then. But it wasn't bad.
Oh no! First of all, I would say 2 teams could have hung in the NFL. They wouldn't have been playoff teams. I think the Philadelphia Stars, Michigan Panthers are 7 and 9 NFL teams back then. But more importantly, the USFL. First of all, the Jim Kelly and the run and shoot offense that came from the USFL. Mel Davis coached it. As soon as the USFL died, you saw these 4 or 5 wide receiver sets in the NFL. No tight end. That's from the USFL. The 2-point conversion, the coach's challenge, both from the USFL. 4 Hall of Famers started in the USFL: Jim Kelly, Steve Young, Reggie White, Gary Zimmerman. A ton of coaches and general managers came. About 200 players from the NFL, from the USFL to the NFL. And most importantly, and the thing, it's kind of, I mean, it is what it is, but the modern player doesn't know, is, Le'Veon Bell at some point is going to sign a huge contract to play football again. And he should be thanking the USFL, because when salaries really skyrocketed is when, for the first time, there was a rival to the NFL,
right.
and the USFL was trying to sign away players. So all these guys today making a huge money, it dates specifically back to the years 1983, 84, and 85.
And also it became the big fight for quarterbacks, because that was the story of the game. If you had the big quarterback, and of course you just mentioned players like Kelly went over to become stars in the National Football League, and they were the ones that got the big money. And of course, when they were able to move into the NFL, they were in great shape.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else that's interesting, and I think is worth noting. The USFL was a place where African-American quarterbacks were allowed to be quarterbacks. This was a time when quarterbacks were still usually you'd have black quarterbacks coming out of college, and they'd say, yeah, I see him as a defensive back, or I see him as a wide receiver. So you had Walter Lewis coming out of Alabama, just as an example. NFL teams had him strictly as a defensive back. He went to the Memphis Showboats. He was a quarterback. Reggie Collier coming out of Southern Miss, first round pick in the USFL, was left a quarterback. The guys like John Wall. Doug Williams' his entire career is resurrected. People remember him winning the Super Bowl MVP with the Washington Redskins. What they forget are the 2 years before that when he was a quarterback for the Oklahoma/Arizona Outlaws, because Tampa Bay, the owner of Tampa Bay, Hugh Culverhouse, wouldn't allow him to be anything higher than the 50th paid quarterback in the NFL. So they did a lot of things that needed to be done. And I think they're really worthwhile to look back on. They did.
It's going to be interesting, Doug, and maybe you throw a word in on this too. McMahon has tried he's put his finger in the pie in football one time, not too successfully. Now he's going to try it again. He's had a lot of success with wrestlers, but I don't know if he's going to have success with football.
It just seems gimmicky, doesn't it? That's his biggest problem. I think Vince McMahon comes with an image, which is wrestling, of a little gimmicky. And I think that's a tough thing. It's hard enough to craft that market as it is, but to come in and for people not to take it seriously, I think it's going to be hard.
And Dick Ebersol's son, right? Dick Ebersol's son is with the other league, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Correct. Yeah.
So that's already, I think, had some teams already put together. I just want to mention, you mentioned Tampa Bay. The Tampa Bay Bandits were a pretty successful team in the USFL, and who we just lost over the weekend. Burt Reynolds was part owner of the Bandit. Did you get a chance to talk with him at all for the book?
I did not, regrettably. I called, but I just didn't get to talk to him. He was very unique. Because a lot of times you have celebrity quote-unquote owners, but they do nothing and have nothing to do with it. They just, they're a name.
Right.
He was involved. He was around a lot.
I would think so because, first of all, he was a college player in Florida. He had his ranch and everything in Florida. He basically housed himself in Florida when he was out on the West Coast. And so he very much wanted to be involved with the Bandits.
Yeah. He's on the cover of that social media guide. Ronnie Anderson, his wife at the time, was the poster girl for the Bandits. There's actually a poster of her wearing a very kind of revealing shirt, and it says all the fun law will allow. And Leonard's got the players. 1 year as a holiday gift, he got them all gold-dipped belt buckles, Bandit belt buckles. And the second year, he got them all satin jackets with his name inscribed inside. So he really took it personally. He did. And they were owned by John Bassett, who. It's really interesting. So John Bassett, the owner of the Bandits, was a Canadian businessman. He owned a team in the world, but he believed in the spring concept, like in a big way. And he hated Donald Trump. And Donald Trump saw him as kind of an enemy. And John Bassett, in late '84, was diagnosed with brain cancer.
Right.
And when that happened, it's really interesting. You talk about past being prologue. When that happened, Donald Trump just stomped all over him and sort of saw it as an enemy getting out of the way. It reminded me so much of when John McCain, also with brain cancer, and sort of Donald Trump not giving him any credit or any respect and stomping him out of the way. It is very hard to research a USFL book and feel good about Donald Trump, just as a person. Maybe you like his politics, maybe you don't. It's hard to go over this stuff and think this is a good human being right there, because he treated people so badly in that league. He really did.
Doug?
You mentioned John Bassett. We saw his daughter Carling, who was a pretty good tennis player in her day. She was just down here. They did the Nick Bollettieri documentary a few months ago at the film festival, so we saw her there. But, her dad owned that team, and, sadly he died while the league was still in business. But, again,
she had a dog named Bandit. And that's why the team was named the Bandit.
Oh, is that right? Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah, it's interesting.
Football for a buck. I had not heard that either.
Football for a buck, the crazy rise and crazier demise of the USFL is the full title. I just want to give that again. We've been talking with Jeff Pearlman today. Jeff, when you decided to do this book, was the research fun for you? Or how did you kind of go around, just look up names and talk to people? How'd you do it?
Yeah, it was the best. It was so great. First thing I did was go to eBay and buy every USFL media guide I could find. And I just went about tracking down people. A lot of these guys went into coaching. A lot of them were very easy to find on social media. That makes it very easy. And one name will lead to 5, and 5 names will lead to 10. And
right.
It was my favorite book to write because it sounds weird. I loved the USFL. When I was a senior in high school, 1990, Mail Pack High School, I was taking AP English my senior year, and my teacher, Mr. Height, we all had to do as a final project a 20-page paper on the subject of our choice. I did the downfall of the USFL and wrote 40 pages when I was 18. I'm sure my teacher was like, what am I going to do with this crap? I'm not reading 40 pages about the USFL. Just give up the
I would think Morrow would have been a great guy to work with on, because he was so involved, and the family is a coaching family. His son came into the business as well, as you well know, and he took everything seriously. I mean, he was a great guy to work with. Because, as I said, I just missed out on broadcasting their games because I worked for CBS at the time. And he came to me, Carl Peterson, and said, I want you guys to do our games. And I said, okay, fine. We talked, and because the fellow that owned the team owned shopping. He built big shopping centers. He had plenty of dough. And and CBS said to me, no dice, you're not going to, because it was for another organization. And at that time, not like today, you could work for anybody, but then you couldn't do it.
Moore was interesting. He was a hard-nosed, like players love him in hindsight. They didn't love him, like he was a hard-nosed guy. He was not a soft.
Absolutely. Well, look what he did in New Orleans.
Yeah, exactly. He could really beat the crap out of you. And but man, he was just he told me, I went to the Stars the final chapter of the book actually is I went to it was last year. The Stars had a reunion. In fact, it was pure coincidence. I was in Pennsylvania. I live in California. I was in Pennsylvania, and someone told me you're going to the Stars reunion. And I said, Stars reunion? They said, yeah, they're having one in Philly in 2 days. And I was like, yes, I am. I'm going. And I went, and it was this joyful, joyful occasion. And Moira was there, and I talked with him. I'd interviewed him already, but talked with him about the book. And he said to me that, he said, I coached Peyton Manning when Peyton Manning was in his prime. But the best football player I ever coached was Sam Mills.
Wow.
Yeah, they loved Mills. He was, well, he was such an underdog. I mean, as you mentioned.
Montclair State.
As you mentioned, when he was cut by the NFL, and they called and said to him, here's a guy that's going to be able to play. And not only did he come to Philadelphia, but he became an idol in Philadelphia. So you're exactly right. I can understand what he would say. He's the best player ever coached.
Yeah. It's easy to forget, too, just how. So the Stars, they played in the first championship game, and it was them against Michigan. It was a great game. Late in the game, Bobby Hebert, who was the Panthers quarterback, hit Anthony Carter with a touchdown pass to win the game. Then after the game, fans stormed the field, and police started macing the fans because they were told don't let anyone touch the field. So they're macing and they're letting dogs loose on the fans. It was a typical USFL way to end the first season where nothing could just go perfectly. But those two teams, the Stars had a lot. If you look at the Stars, the Oates brothers, William Fuller, Fusina, Calvin Bryant, a lot of really Sean Landeta was a punter. A lot of really good players. And, the Panthers, Anthony Carter, Bobby Hebert, Ray Bentley, John Corker. These were not joke teams. These were legit. The Panthers, they did one thing wrong that really hurt the USFL, I think. They were kind of a nibbling team midway through 1983 because their offensive line was terrible. And the owner, Al Taubman, went out and signed 3 free agent Pittsburgh Steelers offensive linemen to big money. And when he did that, the other owners were really pissed off. And their general take was, it's one thing to sign Herschel Walker, but once we start giving millions to offensive linemen, we're really doing something that we cannot turn back from.
Yeah.
I think it got them the title. I think it hurt the league in the long run.
And the other thing that Philadelphia had going for them was they played at Franklin Field. The tradition of football at Franklin Field was monumental. And, of course, Moore came right in there, where the Eagles played there, for so many years before the vet was built. And so they came into a situation where they were playing in a historic ballpark, a city that just loved football. And it was a wonderful time. Unfortunately, it just didn't last that long.
And you probably remember this, or maybe you remember if I said it, their last year was actually at Baltimore. Because once they announced they were going to fall, they lost their lease. So they went to Baltimore. And it's really funny. They were the Baltimore Stars, but they played in College Park. None of the players stepped foot in Baltimore. The only time they would even go to Baltimore was Jim Mora would go down every Tuesday night to do his press conference with the Baltimore media. They literally did not play a game or a practice in the city of Baltimore all year, but they were the Baltimore Stars. And half the hope was that maybe if they merged with the NFL, the Colts had left by that point, that they would just pick up the Stars. And the Stars would have been a logical team for the NFL. They were well run, they were quality. They would have been a 7-9, 8-8 team immediately.
Doug?
Well, Jeff, I know we kept you longer than we said, but you write such interesting books. We like talking to you, hearing the stories. And again, Football for a Buck: The Crazy Rise and Crazier Demise of the USFL is the full title, and just coming out tomorrow, the 11th, as we do the show tonight. But I guess it'll be everywhere available. And your website is what, jeffpearlman.com, right?
Yeah, and I just did actually a ranking day by day of my top 25 USFL players of all time, which was insanely fun. I have Sam Mills. I have Mills, Calvin Bryant, Herschel Walker as my Bobby Hebert, Jim Kelly. That was my top 5 USFL players.
Yeah, good names.
Yeah. Not hard to pick.
Yeah.
No.
Jeff, pleasure talking to you. Thanks for taking the time. I guess you got another one in the works, so when that's out, we'll have you back on. We won't wait 2 years, though, but we'll have you on before then. But thanks for joining us.
Oh, man, you guys are the best. Thank you for having me.
Take care, fellas. Always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff Pearlman joining us on the show, and he writes really interesting books, Don. I mean, he picks good topics, too. Brett Favre and Walter Payton, Showtime, and now the USFL. I was going to ask you, Don, I thought maybe you had said you were at one time going to do the games with them, so you had a chance, but contractually you couldn't do it, right?
Yeah, they put the they put the blotto on that. Unfortunately, those days you couldn't work for 2 or 3 different stations at the same time, and I came up against it twice. I beat it once, but I didn't beat it twice. I could do the Temple University football games and basketball games on another station, but
that was a educational channel. It wasn't commercial, right? Was that the difference?
Well, no, we did it on WIP, which was a commercial station.
Oh, okay.
We the only ruling that they had was they weren't allowed to use my name. They couldn't say that I was doing the game.
Oh, is that right?
They said the game, yeah, they said the games could be on, but they couldn't use my name in connection with the broadcast. And
did you have to use another name, or that you just didn't mention who?
No. They would promo the games, but just wouldn't say who was.
Oh, say who was doing the announcing, right?
Yeah. And then we switched from there. We went to the publicly owned station, so that it didn't make any difference.
Yeah.
But no, CBS at that time you couldn't work for 2 organizations at the same time, and but I didn't make out with the with the USFL, but I did okay with Temple.
And now you have to work on multiple stations to make a living.
Boy, I'll tell you, it's unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, it was unbelievable. You couldn't do a commercial. You couldn't do. It was so rigid at that time as the way you could do, what you could do, but boy, today it's altogether different.
Interesting book, and like Jeff said, Donald Trump, big in the news back then. He was been in the news since I guess the late '70s in New York. If you grew up there, reading the papers, but he was part of that league. And no, I didn't remember much of the trial. I know they had it, and the league won $3. It was $1, and then I guess they tripled the damages. But
yeah, it was just unfortunate because.
But he did want to have an NFL team. I'm not sure he was the only one. I think all the owners in that league wanted an NFL team, but he was the front man, and he was being Donald Trump at the time, and that's the way he was. So.
Yep. No, it's exactly the way he was. He decided Herschel Walker was going to make the team, make the league, and as Jeff said, a number of the teams all of a sudden went out and started signing players they couldn't afford.
Right.
And that was the end of that.
Yeah. Interesting league. Only 3 years. I thought it might have gone a little longer, but it was only 3 seasons. Looking back on it now.
The demise came quickly once everybody started to argue and come up with these unbelievable contracts. There was no way they could survive.
Yeah. Just got a few minutes left. Let's talk a little college football over the weekend. I had a chance to go up and see USF, and a very impressive win down. We were talking on the phone Saturday. They beat Georgia Tech, ACC opponent, 49-38. Their quarterback, I tell you, he's getting some national press now. Blake Barnett, 4 touchdowns on the day, 2 running, 2 passing, and they also had a guy that ran back 2 kickoffs for touchdowns, 97 and 98 yards. So a good win for the USF Bulls.
Yeah, it's nice to see that Charlie Strong has really bounced back. Last year, of course, he took them to University of Central Florida, won it, but he was right there with them in the championship game at the end, and didn't win it. But now he's carried on from where Willie Tiger started, and Willie got off to a shaky start in game number 1, but beat a powder puff team in game number 2. So we'll see how he does, but. My weekend was really centered around the Arizona State team. Herman Edwards, I think it's one of the great stories of what's going on right now in the early part of 2018 college football. That a guy his age with all his pro experience and ESPN experience and decided to go back and coach a college team. And what a game. I couldn't make it to the end the other night. It was 3-3 at halftime. And, of course, Arizona State knocked off Michigan State, which was at the time, I think, ranked 15th. And it was a great win for Arizona State. So now Herm Edwards is 2-0, and Herb, of course, probably the most famous play in Eagle history.
Joe Pisarcik.
That's it. Joe Pisarcik's fumbled ball, and he picked it up, scooped it up, and the Eagles won at Giant Stadium, and it's one of the history plays in Philadelphia, if not the history play in Philadelphia.
It actually was probably the best thing that ever happened to the Giants too, because that got rid of all the front office, and they finally started to turn it around after that.
Yes,
happened.
they did. You're exactly right. And Pisarcik, all he had to do was kneel down. Didn't have to do anything. And the Giants win the game, and he decides to hand it off and fumbles the ball, and Herb picks it up and runs. And so I was just tickled pink. And I've watched they've done a couple of features on ESPN with him. And he's an unusual guy, very, very optimistic about everything. And but to make the decision to go back and leave the TV booth and go back, I just wish him all the luck in the world. He's proving that, they keep saying, well, he won't relate to the kids. He's too old. He can't know. None of these young coaches that coached 25 years ago could coach today because the kids wouldn't listen to them.
Right.
Well, I guess he's got a little different idea of how to coach out there because the first two games they listened to him pretty well.
Well, he coached that high school Under Armour All-Star game, which was played at the Trop a couple of years in Orlando. So he's done that the last few years. So he's gotten back into coaching, doing that with the high school and players. So I think that kind of whet his appetite to get back into the game.
I never saw an individual as enthusiastic about getting back on the field. He talks about.
Oh yeah.
I'm in where I should be. I'm in my place. This is where I'm supposed to be. When I walked into the stadium, all the things that. But he is a. Sort of a philosopher.
He's a motivational kind of a guy, like Vital.
Absolutely.
He's very, very good at the motivational speaking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And he's that way, like you knew him from when he was a player. Was he like that then?
Well, I knew, he was. And I knew him when he was out in Kansas City.
Right.
He's made a number of stops before Jets. Of course, he was the head coach with the Jets. He was assistant coach out in Kansas City when they went to the championship game, and so he had his chance to coach. It didn't pan out in the pros for him. The Jets was never able to bring the Jets around and become a real factor.
Yeah, well, nobody's done that since Weeb.
Yeah,
and Bill Parcells came the closest, but he had some injuries. That one year they could have won it, but then Vinny Testaverde got injured, and they didn't make it to the Super Bowl. But other than that, Weeb Eubanks, the last guy that could win with the Jets.
Well, they have great hopes for what's going on tonight. Unfortunately, he threw an interception on the first play, and Detroit ran it back for a touchdown, so the Jets are down.
Oh, really? Oh, that's right. It's the early game tonight. It's a doubleheader night, right? Yeah.
That's the early game, and but he sort of regrouped, and now he's got them down just inside the 10-yard line with first and goal to go. So he didn't collapse after the interception on his very first pass.
We'll wrap it up quickly so we can get back to the games. But just quickly on the U.S. Open, Djokovic, straight sets. I saw a little bit of that, not a lot of it, but that second set was the whole key to it. That went to the tiebreak. I guess there was an hour and a half to play that second set, but once that was over, Djokovic just rolled the rest of the way. So he really has made a great comeback by his standards.
Yeah, 6-3 in the first, and the second, he won the tiebreaker relatively easily, 7-4. And then, of course, took the third set with relative ease as well. You're right. And I saw all of that yesterday afternoon. And he came back from the elbow surgery, and he is great friends, I should say, with his opponent. They've known each other for a long time. What a gentleman he was during the ceremony and all. It was terrific to watch.
Shame that didn't carry over to the women's side.
Well,
she's getting killed by all the media on this. I'm talking about Serena now. She got, a fine for $17,000? Is that what you said earlier?
Yeah, $17,000 she was fined.
Which is a drop in the bucket, but she did not handle herself well.
No, and it's been really the topic of conversation. If you watched any of the national news tonight, every one of the stations did at least a 1 minute, 1.5 minute segment on her conversation with the chair and what happened. And, of course, now they're talking about being a sexist thing. And Billie Jean King came on and said exactly what Serena said, that was, they would never have done this to a man. It was only the fact she was a woman that called all these penalties.
Billie Jean always has to get her 2 cents in.
Yeah. Well, she got her money's worth, but it cost her $17,000 to do it.
Not taking anything away from Serena's talent. Great tennis player, no doubt about it. Although I don't think she's had the competition that maybe, back in the heyday, but that's not her fault. But she does not handle herself well. Very hard to root for her, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know how she would do with Chrissy Everett or how she would have done with Martina.
She had 5 or 6 other players like they did in that era.
Yeah, exactly. And
but it's not her fault that the other players are on her level now. But I think people have to take it a little bit easy saying she's the all-time greatest. She's top 5, maybe.
Well, I think
top 10, maybe.
If you saw this Open at all, when she played her sister to go into the quarterfinals, I mean, it was a joke. I mean,
yeah, that's never a good match. They always either it's almost scripted what they do there.
She's 38 years old. I mean, and so she had no chance. And then when she played the semifinals, I mean, it was. I mean, you and I could have gone out there and played. I mean, it was really a joke.
Yeah.
And she won so easily. And then the only competition she had was yesterday with a 20-year-old, and she beat her. I don't care about the penalties or anything else. She was much better the player in the Saturday, not yesterday. In Saturday's match, she was much better the player than Serena was. So I don't know what they would even complain about.
No.
She wouldn't have won anyway.
But anyway, good for Djokovic, and Serena has to wait another 6 months now to see, or 4 or 5 months to see if she can tie Margaret Court for the all-time lead. That's what she was going for yesterday.
I think it's 24, but I'm not sure it's 24. But I think
25 to tie.
Is
Margaret.
that what it is? 25.
Yeah, so she needs one more to tie her.
Yeah.
Right.
Jets just scored a touchdown, so it's going to be 7-7. So everybody's going to be happy in New York. Jets are getting off to at least a representative start in the beginning of the season.
Don't print those playoff tickets yet. I'd like to thank again Jeff Pearlman for joining us. Again, Football for a Buck, The Crazy Rise and Crazier Demise of the USFL is the name of his book. You can go out his website, jeffpearlman.com, and check that out. And Don, have a good week, and we'll do it again next time. But good to talk a little vintage football tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Jeff did a great job. It's nice to have him on with us. And I'll tell you, football's underway full steam after yesterday, and we'll see what happens as the season unfolds. You're down there in Buckland, and they get off to a great start. And how about that quarterback? I mean, that game of his life.
Yep, doing great, and looks like the Charlie found a good one.
Well, we'll see what happens.
We'll talk to you next week, everybody.